Thank you. It is such an honor to be here, to celebrate with you people doing something about what's happening in the world, and particularly women doing something about it, as well WILP is doing for more than 93 years. What a remarkable history, and how critical it is that you become stewards not only of the earth, but of foreign and domestic policy. It is truly up to all of you. It starts with you, you inspire others, and together, never one person doing it, but you can truly change the world. When people ask me this year about the presidential candidates, what I think, I said, I'm thinking about all of you. It's not up to one individual. They're politicians, they want your vote. They will respond to your demands. But as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. Every time a politician comes through, a presidential candidate makes his way through Iowa, such an important state, instead of taking a snapshot with him, instead of shaking his hand, shake the system, make a demand. Even those who have questions at the beginning become its greatest advocates. We are now going on more and more conservative stations around the country. You know, I think President Bush not finding weapons of mass destruction exposed more than the Bush administration, right? If he had a little megaphone on the steps of the White House and intoned WMD, WMD, he might have convinced a few people, but he had something much more powerful. He had the most powerful institutions on earth, more powerful than any bomb, more powerful than any missile. He had the US media, and we have to take it back. That's what convinced so many people. The amplification of the lies in so many places, on radio, on television, in the newspapers, in a leading newspaper of record, New York, the New York Times, week after week, the front page articles alleging weapons of mass destruction. And so now there is a moment where people realize the media got it wrong. It wasn't just the administration, it wasn't just the Democrats joining with the Republicans. Let's not forget, the Republicans could not have done it alone. You had John Kerry, you had John Edwards, you had Hillary Clinton, the leading Democratic candidates in 2004 and one of the leading ones in 2008 until now, voting for the invasion. The vets in this country are in so much pain. I can't think of a better argument for independent media than the coverage of the Winter Soldier hearings. How many of you heard or watched or read about them on Democracy Now? Winter Soldier. It comes from Thomas Paine's 1776 pamphlet, The Crisis. These are the times that try men's souls, talking about the summertime soldier and patriot, and the winter soldiers, the ones that stay. Well, in 1971, hundreds of Vietnam vets packed into a Howard Johnson's in Detroit to talk about their own experiences, to talk about the horrors of war, to talk about atrocities they themselves had been involved with. Well, that experience was repeated this year on the 5th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq. In Silver Spring, Maryland, at the National Labor College. We at Democracy Now! Raced to the college because we figured, you know, although we cover issues like this a great deal, now all the corporate media is going to be there. I mean, this is the story, what you look for if you're a journalist, you can look for years. People with their own firsthand experiences talking about their experiences of war, bringing back the documentary evidence, the videotape, and the photographs. Well, we had nothing to worry about in terms of finding space because that media did not show up, though the independent media was there in force, in full. Hundreds of veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, with some active duty soldiers as well, bravely talking about their experiences, like Hart Vigis of the 82nd Airborne. He talked about going on a house raid. He said, "We never got the right house, not once." He described going to a house, arresting 2 young men in the house, realizing full well that these were not the men that they were looking for. And he turned to his sergeant, he said, "Sarge, these aren't the guys." And he said he knew, but he said they would probably do something wrong anyways. So they took them. And he said, and there was their mother, weeping at Hart Vigis's feet, begging him not to take her son, saying they hadn't done anything wrong. Now, she was speaking in Arabic, and Hart said, "I don't speak Arabic, but I speak human." And I knew what this mother was saying. He said, here I was with the 82nd Airborne, the full power of the U.S. military, with the planes, with the tanks, with our weapons, with our armor. And he said, and I was powerless to help this desperate mother. I was powerless to help her. And then there was John Michael Turner. I met John in Vermont a few months ago. I met him at the Big Picture Theater in Waitsfield, an independent cinema. I was speaking at the Human Rights Film Festival there, and they were showing a couple of films, including The Valley of Elah, a very painful film about Iraq, and John Michael Turner was going in. He was clearly in a lot of pain. Had served in Iraq, told me about the Winter Soldier hearing, said it was going to be where he would testify for the first time, and there he was in Maryland. He ripped his medals off his chest as he described his experiences, as he described killing a man in front of him and in front of the other guy on post, knowing he had not done anything. It took 7 members of the man's family, he called him the Fat Man, to take him away, and how he was congratulated by his commander, and how his commander had told the members of his unit, if any of you kill someone by stabbing them to death, you'll get a 4-day pass when you come back from Iraq. With that, he ripped the medals off his chest, because suicides are not counted, though they are coming near epidemic numbers. They have to be counted. We need to know the stories and the names of those who are suffering. Not only those who have come home, but those who have died there, American and Iraqi. The estimate in Iraq of those who have died, according to a Columbia Johns Hopkins study, is something like over 1 million Iraqis have died. Over 1 million. Over 1 million U.S. soldiers have served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's estimated about 1/3 of them are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Can you imagine the ripple effect in their families when they come home, the violence? Can you imagine the ripple effect in the communities and in our larger community? This is the effect of war. And when you hear someone speaking from their own experience, whether it's a Palestinian child or an Israeli grandmother, whether it's an Iraqi uncle or an Afghan aunt, whether it's a kid in the South Bronx or in Venezuela or right here in Des Moines, you say, that sounds like my mother, that sounds like my baby, it sounds like my aunt, it sounds like my brother. It breaks down barriers. When you hear someone describing their own experience, it breaks down the stereotypes and the caricatures that fuel the bigotry, that feed the hate groups. We need a media in this country that builds bridges, not advocates the bombing of bridges. That's what a truly independent media does. That is the power of a peace media, letting people speak for themselves, and when they can't, telling their stories until they can tell their own.